For years, the U.S. Navy has had a clear technological advantage over its adversaries in the area of guns that utilize explosives to fire projectiles. But as time goes on, conventional projectiles will eventually be replaced by directed energy weapons. One of these is the Railgun, which took the Navy over 15 years and $500 million to develop, and that's exactly what we're talking about in today's video. In 1984, with the formation of the Strategic Defense Initiative, research goals shifted towards building a constellation of satellites to intercept ICBMs, leading the U.S. military to focus on developing small guided missiles capable of withstanding high G-force launches from high-velocity plasma-armored railguns. However, just a year later, an important Defense Science Council study was published, after which the U.S. Army, Marine Corps, and DARPA were instructed to develop anti-tank electromagnetic launching technologies for mobile ground vehicles. Since 2005, the U.S. Navy has been developing the EMRG, Electromagnetic Railgun, a gun that uses electricity instead of powder charges to fire projectiles. Gunpowder, in principle, has long been the preferred fuel for launching projectiles from weapons. But it has three main limitations. It makes the cartridge noticeably heavier. Black powder ammunition is extremely explosive, so it needs to be stored and transported as carefully as possible. And finally, the muzzle velocity of the projectiles driven by gunpowder is about 4,000 mph. But the way to overcome all these shortcomings is the electromagnetic railgun. Using an electrically powered magnetic field, it's able to propel a projectile up to a whopping 52,493 feet per second. An electrical current flows from the positive terminal of the power source up to the positive rail, through the armature and down the negative rail back to the power supply. The current flowing through the wire creates a magnetic field around it, an area in which there is a magnetic force, with both magnitude and direction. In a railgun, the parallel rails play the role of a wire, and a magnetic field circulates around each rail. The magnetic field lines run in a counterclockwise circle around the positive rail, and in a clockwise circle around the negative rail. In this case, the total magnetic field between the rails is directed vertically, parallel to the charged wire and the electric field. The American CG-47 cruisers, or DDG-51 destroyers, simply don't have sufficient power generation, even for the previously mentioned 32 MJ setup, which requires a minimum of 15 MW and preferably 30 MW of onboard power. More advanced railguns with a capacity of 64 MJ or higher are even worse, requiring ships to supply power in the amount of 40 MW, 50 MW, or even more. Only ships of the new Zumwalt or DDX generations would be able to provide such power, generating up to 78 MW, of which the ship itself needs about 20 MW for stable operation. To fire a railgun projectile from on board such a ship, engine power would be applied to the gun turret, allowing the weapon to fire up to 6 rounds per minute for as long as needed. Afterward, the power would be fed back to the ship's engine. Among the other cons worth mentioning are the following. Recoil force. The rails must withstand the enormous recoil force due to the projectile's colossal muzzle velocity. The current in each of the weapon's rails flows in opposite directions, creating a strong pushing force that attempts to pull the rails apart, causing rapid evaporation and extensive damage to the rail and insulator surfaces. To date, the U.S. Office of Naval Research has recorded a maximum projectile velocity of Mach 6 or 4,600 miles per hour, which is several times faster than a 155mm howitzer's maximum projectile velocity of 1,260 miles per hour. But after 15 years of development and more than $500 million in budget funds, the U.S. Department of Defense was forced to shift the Navy's attention to hypersonic missiles and lasers, and the Railgun project was shelved. This doesn't necessarily mean you and I will not see a railgun aboard one of the Zumwalt or even more advanced Navy ships, but it makes it clear that the fleet has other priorities now, and given the warm relations between the United States and China, which is also actively developing its own railgun, the President and Congress may very well change their minds very soon. What do you think? Will scientists and the military manage to bring the Railgun project to the table? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. See you next time.